The dust came in waves, drawn by the wind and spit from the bones of the dry land. It clung to every surface, faces, boots, and the wooden crossbeams of the town's auction platform. Even the sun looked sick through the haze, bleeding orange across the warped sign that read, "Stock. Horses. Labor." A crow watched from the post, black against fire-colored sky, waiting like it knew someone wasn't leaving with breath in their chest. He stood near the back of the crowd, coat frayed at the cuffs, hat pulled low enough to shadow a face carved by time and sun. 37, maybe 39. Age no longer mattered much when every year felt like two. He smelled of saddle leather and dry tobacco, and his boots hadn't touched a saloon floor in months. Not since the rains failed. Not since the last steer died belly up with grassless spit in its mouth. The crowd murmured. A woman sobbed once, short and sharp like a snapped twig. Someone spat. Then she was brought forward. Not a woman, not a girl. Something in between. 19, they said, though the look in her eyes held more winters than that. Her dress was plain, torn at the hem, and her wrists were shackled with leather bands, just tight enough to shame without bruising. She didn't cry, didn't tremble, just stood, dust curling around her bare ankles, like smoke around an unlit match. Indentured labor, the auctioneer barked, lifting a sun-scorched ledger. Father died owing. No family stepped forward. Full transfer of contract and obligations. Strong back. Quiet. Unbroken. The rancher didn't move. Not yet. His hand stayed loose at his side, fingers twitching once like they itched for something more dangerous than coins. He watched her, eyes narrowed under the brim. The line of her jaw, the way she didn't flinch when someone in the front row laughed low and filthy. $5 to start, someone barked. 6. A man in a butcher's apron, his voice wet with hunger. 7. A chuckle. She'll cook real nice by the fire. The rancher moved then, quiet as dusk. He walked forward slow, each step kicking a puff of dust, and drew a coin from his coat. A dull silver dollar, scratched near the rim. He held it up. Didn't say a word. The auctioneer squinted. You offering 10? A nod. Silence. Then someone hissed. 10? For her? You mad? The girl finally turned her head, slow as driftwood turning in a stream, and looked at him. Her eyes weren't soft, weren't grateful, just steady, like a wound that had already scarred over. $10, the auctioneer confirmed. Going once. The rancher didn't blink. Going twice. He saw it then. A faint tremor in her lip, quickly swallowed. But real. A crack in the stone. Sold. The crowd broke into whispers, some mocking, others disturbed. A few men cursed under their breath. No one applauded. The girl was led off the platform, unshackled, and handed a worn satchel. Someone shoved it at her hard. She stumbled, but didn't fall. Her balance was too clean for that. The rancher didn't wait. He turned and walked. She followed. They reached the chapel just before sundown, where the old preacher was sweeping out dead leaves. He raised a brow, taking in the pair, her with iron still in her gaze, him with dust on his soul. Ain't no ceremony tonight, the preacher said. It don't need one, the rancher replied. Just paper and witness. The preacher looked to the girl. You say yes, or I won't write it. Her voice was quiet, flat. What's the difference between wife and work hand? Sometimes none, the preacher admitted. She looked at the rancher. Why? His answer came slower than thunder, but just as heavy. Because they weren't bidding for your hands. She nodded once. The paper was signed before the bell tower gave its last cry of the day. The sky was purple and gold by the time they reached his horse, 2 saddlebags and a holstered rifle swaying with each step. He lifted her up first. Not gently, but respectfully, like setting a stone where it belonged. The ride was long, silent, broken only by the creak of leather and the coyote howls far off in the hills. By nightfall, the ranch rose before them, fences crooked, barn leaning like it had secrets, a chimney puffing the thinnest trail of smoke. She didn't ask for a tour. He didn't offer one. Inside, she walked the room like measuring a cage. She set her satchel down by the wall and unrolled a thin blanket beside the hearth. You can take the bed, he said, removing his coat. She shook her head. Don't want the bed. He looked at her then, really looked. Not as the girl from the block. Not as a labor. But as someone whose entire life had been one long fight to not be used. I didn't buy you for that, he said. I know, she replied. But I don't sleep where men do. Not till I know the dogs bark before they bite. He nodded, as if she'd just spoken scripture. Later, he sat at the table with an open tin of beans, chewing slow, eyes on the warped floorboards. She cleaned a small knife near the hearth. The fire made her shadow stretch long across the room, dancing like it wanted out. You ever been west of the river? He asked finally. No. He paused. Want to be? Her hands didn't stop. I want to be alive come spring. Fair answer. The wind rattled the windows. A storm would come, maybe tonight, maybe not. He didn't ask her name. She didn't ask his. Names could come later. When the fire died low, and the coyote's song got closer, he spoke once more into the dark. I ain't your enemy, but I sure as hell ain't your savior either. There was no answer, just the soft click of her knife sliding beneath her pillow. He leaned back in his chair, closed his eyes, and let the creaking wood of the house whisper him toward sleep. And somewhere outside that little ranch house, the wind carried word of a girl who didn't cry, and a man who'd married her before the sun could set. The first frost came without warning, silent, brittle, uninvited. It turned the earth silver under the pale morning light, killing what little crop clung to life and painting the fields with failure. He stood at the edge of the barley rows, boots crunching on dead roots, arms folded like he could hold back the season with posture alone. The girl joined him without a word. She studied the frost for a long minute, then turned and walked back toward the house, her footsteps clean and precise, like she'd seen loss before and didn't need to mourn it again. They didn't speak much, not out of tension, but because words cost more than they were worth. Days passed in the rhythm of labor, mend, haul, chop, feed. She proved capable, faster than him on the fence line, more patient with the horses, better at coaxing water from the old well when it threatened to choke. He watched her from the porch sometimes, her shadow long against the dust, the sleeves of her shirt rolled to the elbows, and hair tied back like she'd never had time for vanity. He noticed she didn't smile. Not even once. Not even when the foal she delivered stood for the first time, legs trembling like it was drunk on sunlight. She just exhaled, slow and steady, and wiped the blood from her hands like it was any other morning. At night, she slept by the hearth, always with her back to the wall, and her boots pointed toward the door. The knife never left her reach. He stopped offering the bed after the first 3 refusals. Instead, he started leaving the coffee pot full. She drank it black and early, always before him. One afternoon, she found a length of barbed wire tangled in the east pasture. Tried to pull it loose, didn't see the tension, and it snapped across her forearm like a whip. She came back with blood dripping from her fingertips, holding the wound tight with her opposite hand. He looked up from where he was hammering a loose shutter and saw red darkening her sleeve. Let me stitch it, he said, already reaching for the tin box inside the door. I'll do it, she muttered. You're shaking. She sat down on the porch step, pulled her sleeve back, and laid the gash bare. The cut was shallow but long. It had the look of something earned, not accidental. Without flinching, she poured whiskey over it, bit down on the hem of her skirt, and stitched herself up. He watched her hands, steady, practiced. You'd done that before, he said, more observation than question. She tied off the last knot, wiped the blood with a rag, and dropped the needle back into the tin. Too many times. That night, when he returned from checking the traps along the tree line, he found his war journal placed neatly on the table. He hadn't left it there. The binding was creased differently. He didn't open it, just sat beside it, staring like it was a ghost that had found its way back from the battlefield. He wondered what she read. Probably the pages with maps drawn in the margins, or the sketch of his brother with the penciled words. Buried at Chickamauga. Still hear him in the wind. But she never mentioned it. Not a word. That was her way. Later that week, a storm rolled through. Hard rain and cold thunder. The roof leaked in 3 places. She grabbed the buckets like it was muscle memory. They worked by lantern light, patching what they could, listening to the wind slam against the walls like it had a grudge to settle. He caught her looking at the fire once, eyes narrowed, as if trying to decide whether to let herself feel its warmth. "You always look ready to leave," he said. She blinked, slow, like waking from a distant place. "You always look like you expect to be left." He said nothing after that. Some truths didn't need wrestling. 2 mornings later, she stood outside watching the sky. It was early, cold enough to make breath visible. He joined her with 2 tin mugs. She took the coffee without thanks. "There's tracks down by the dry creek," she said. 3 riders. Maybe 4. He frowned. Didn't hear a thing. They weren't moving fast. No wagon. No cattle. Just watching. Maybe passing through. She gave him a look sharp enough to cut kindling. They weren't. He knew she was right. Men didn't pass through this stretch without reason. It was too dry, too forgotten, too dangerous. The land had a way of keeping secrets and hunters. That night, she didn't sleep by the hearth. She slept by the window, wrapped in a blanket, watching the tree line. He loaded the rifle before bed, left the lantern burning. In the morning, he found her already saddling the mule. "Where you going?" "Just to the ridge. I want to see how far the tracks go." "I'll go. I'm faster alone." He watched her ride out. No hesitation. Just resolve wrapped in a worn coat and dust-covered boots. She didn't look back once. She returned 2 hours later with a scrap of cloth caught in her belt, a piece of dark blue cotton with a stitch patch. "Union riders," she said, "or someone wearing their ghosts." He leaned against the fence. "You running from something?" "Not anymore." "Then why are they coming?" She looked toward the hills, where the trees shifted under the wind like they held breath. "Because they remember something I survived. And men like that hate loose ends." The frost returned the next morning, harder this time, killing the last of the pumpkins, cracking the watering trough, sealing the barn doors with ice. He found her feeding the chickens, silent, movements sharp. "This place," she said quietly, "wasn't built for soft winters." "No. But it's mine. What's left of it." She dropped the feed tin. "And now it's mine too, isn't it? Since we're wed and all." He met her eyes. "Only if you want it. I don't know what I want." "That's fine." There was a pause. Wind moved between them, lifting the hem of her coat. "But I know what I won't be," she said. "I won't be hunted quiet. I won't be another ghost." He nodded once. "Good. I don't bury ghosts. I ride with them." That night, for the first time, she moved her blanket to the far end of the bed. Not close, not touching. Just near. The knife stayed under her pillow. But so did she. The knock came at dusk. Not loud. Just firm. The kind of knock that didn't ask permission. He set the poker back against the hearth and crossed the room slow. She was already at the window. One hand behind her back where the knife usually slept. Her eyes flicked once to him. Warning, not fear. 3 men stood outside the gate. One leaned on the rail like he owned it. All wore coats dusted from the trail, but only one carried himself like the trail answered to him. He stepped out onto the porch, rifle cradled loosely in his arms. "Evening." The man in front smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "You the one took a girl out of the dirt last month." "That depends." "I ain't here to trade riddles, friend. We're looking for someone. Got reason to believe she's here." "She's my wife," the rancher said evenly. "Ain't no law says she can't be." Another man, older, with a twisted mouth and long scar under his jaw, swung down from the saddle and spat. "She ain't your problem. She's a debt. A stolen one." The third rider said nothing, just watched. He had eyes like wet stones, gray and unreadable. The rancher didn't flinch. "You bring paper? Marshal seal? Warrant?" "No need," the leader said, still smiling. "This ain't a law matter. It's family. Old business. Then you can take your business elsewhere." The wind stirred, lifting dust between them like a veil. The girl stepped into the doorway, behind him, quiet but deliberate. She looked at the men and said nothing. Stone eyes squinted. "That her?" The man with the scar took a step forward. "She knows what her daddy took. Ledger from the Borderland Bank." Proof of the land thefts. Names of men still breathing, still wearing badges they bought with blood. That paper didn't vanish. Someone hid it. She was 10, the rancher said. She was watching, the leader replied. Kids see things. Remember things. I don't have it, she said flatly. No, the man said, but you're the last thing breathing that might lead us to it. There was silence. Long cold. The rancher stepped forward until his boots met the edge of the porch. This ranch is mine. She's under my roof. That makes her my blood, in the ways that count. You want her, you come through me. The man tilted his head. You got fight in you. Brave, maybe. But brave's just another word for buried out here. Then bring a shovel, the rancher muttered. And a map to hell. The three men rode off, leaving the fence creaking behind them. The girl watched until they were only dust. Inside, she sat on the edge of the bed, shoulder stiff. You knew, he said softly, who they were, why they come. I knew they'd find me eventually. I just didn't think they'd find me here. You want to run? She didn't answer, just stared at the wall, fingers twisting in her lap. If I run, they burn this place to ash. Kill the stock. Salt the ground. They don't chase ghosts. They erase them. He pulled a chair close. You tell me the rest. All of it. No more pieces. She looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. My father wasn't a thief. Not the way they say. He was a ledger man. Saw too much. Wrote names down. Names of land barons stealing tribal homesteads, moving survey markers, bribing soldiers. They killed him when he tried to go public. You saw. I saw what was left. Her voice trembled. Just once. My mother, she was a healer. Border tribe blood. They called her witch. Said she hid the ledger before they burned the cabin. Did she? I think so. I don't know where. But they think I do. Always did. He leaned back. Why'd you never say? Because saying it doesn't stop bullets. And you already saved me once. I wasn't going to ask again. He nodded slowly. This land's worth fighting for. Same as you. She met his eyes. You don't even know me. I know enough. That night, they didn't sleep. He cleaned the rifles. She boiled coffee black enough to burn. They spoke little. What hadn't been said didn't need saying. Before dawn, he rode out to the ridge line alone. He found hoofprints. Campfire ash still warm. They weren't far. Waiting for weakness. Waiting for darkness to do the killing for them. When he returned, she was outside, feeding the chickens like it was any other morning. Except the knife was strapped to her thigh now, and her hair was braided tight against her neck. Storm's coming, he said. I don't mind storms, she replied. They don't lie about what they are. He handed her the revolver. She checked the chamber without comment. She was no stranger to weapons. He wondered what else she'd had to hold to stay alive. In the distance, a hawk cried once, cutting the silence in two. That evening, they moved supplies inside, locked the doors, lit the lantern low. Every creak of the wind set nerves on edge, every shadow a possible rider. He stood at the window, scanning the hills. You ever kill a man? She asked, her voice soft but not afraid. He didn't look at her. Yes, during the war. And once after. That one still keeps me up. Why'd you do it? Because I was scared. She nodded like she understood. You're not scared now? I'm terrified, he said. But not for me. She looked down, hands folded, then stepped forward. Close enough that her breath touched his collar. I don't need a savior, she whispered. Just someone who doesn't run when it gets ugly. He met her gaze. I was planning to stay ugly. That's still all right. She almost smiled. Almost. Outside, the wind picked up. The trees began to sway, and in their creaking limbs was the promise of something coming. She moved her bedroll beside the doorway that night, gun in hand, eyes wide open. Neither of them spoke the word family, but the silence between them was full of it. And just before the lantern died, a coyote howled, and somewhere behind it, boots shifted in the dark. Before dawn, the air turned sharp. Not cold, sharp, like it could cut. The kind of stillness that came before thunder or death. He stepped out onto the porch, boots quiet against old wood, rifle across his back and lantern in hand. Behind him, she stood in the doorway, her coat already on, braided hair tucked into her collar. No words passed between them. They'd said what mattered the night before. He walked the perimeter, checking the tripwires she'd rigged from bell wire and old nails. Broken glass filled a pail by the front gate. They scattered it like caltrops in the high grass, where horses would hesitate. Every corner of the house was braced, barn doors locked, windows boarded waist-high. A poor man's fortress, but it would hold for a while. She stayed near the fire, loading shells into a bandolier. Her hands moved with the grace of someone who knew panic was for other people. The girl who had once flinched at nothing now looked calm enough to sleep. But he saw the tightness around her mouth, the way her eyes lingered too long on the door. When the sun rose, it did so behind clouds. Weak light spilled across the hills. Nothing moved. Nothing breathed. Then came the riders. 4 of them, this time silhouettes against the ridge. They didn't rush. They approached with the confidence of men who believed the outcome was already written. The one with the gray eyes. He carried a rifle like it was an extension of his spine. The leader had a pistol resting easy in his palm. Scarjaw rode ahead, chewing something dark. They stopped 30 yards from the porch. The rancher stepped forward, rifle slung low. She was at his flank, revolver drawn, but pointed toward the dirt. "You don't have to die over this," the leader called out. "Hand her over. You can still walk away." "I've done enough walking in this life," the rancher said. "I'm staying." The man sighed. "Then you picked your grave." He whistled once. The first shot came from the side, hidden in the brush. It clipped the porch post, splintering wood beside her head. She dropped flat, rolled behind the rain barrel. He returned fire, short bursts, measured. 2 riders peeled off, circling wide. She hit one in the leg as he dismounted, sent him screaming behind the trough. Gunfire thundered across the ranch, echoing into the hills. It wasn't a clean fight. It was ugly, raw. Blood sprayed against stone and soaked into the earth like it belonged there. The gray-eyed shooter took the far flank. Fast. Precise. She traded fire with him behind the chicken coop, breath held between each pull of the trigger. He nicked her shoulder. She barely flinched. The rancher caught Scarjaw behind the water tower, shot him once in the chest, and again when he didn't fall fast enough. He reloaded behind a wagon, teeth gritted against the pain in his ribs where a stray round had found him. It didn't last long. Most gunfights don't. When it ended, the gray-eyed man was on his knees, bleeding from the stomach. She approached him slowly, revolver still hot in her hand. "You look like her," he rasped. "Your mother." She didn't answer. "She was good," he whispered. "Too good to be wasted on this dirt." She raised the gun. "You made it waste." He nodded, lips curling in something that might have been a smile or surrender. She pulled the trigger. The shot echoed long and low, then was swallowed by silence. When she turned back to the porch, the rancher was on the ground, leaning against the doorframe. Blood soaked his side. His hand pressed hard into the wound, but it was too much. She dropped beside him, tore her coat off, tried to stop the bleeding. He caught her wrist. "Don't waste it," he murmured. "Ain't no stopping it now." "Shut up," she said, voice cracking. "Don't talk like that." But his hand was already colder than it should have been. He looked at her, not with fear, not even pain. Just peace. Like he'd finally found the end of a long, cruel trail. "I was just trying to get to spring," she whispered, tears streaking through dust. "You will," he breathed. "But not as someone's ghost. As someone's storm." He coughed once, dry, like the wind had gotten in his lungs. "You remember where I buried the ledger?" he asked, voice thin. She blinked. "You what?" "In the barn," he said, breath rattling. "Under the floor. I found it in your satchel. Months back. Knew they'd come. Thought maybe I could be the wall." "You knew. I didn't want you carrying it anymore. You carried enough." She stared at him, stunned, as his eyes drifted skyward. "Don't bury me under my name," he whispered. "Bury me under yours." Then he went still. She stayed there a long time. Long enough for the wind to shift. Long enough for the sun to warm the blood on the porch. She buried him beneath the cedar tree, where the wind was always strong and the ground sloped gentle toward the horizon. No cross, just stones. On one, she carved 4 words: husband, fighter, home, storm. In the barn, she found the ledger, wrapped in oilcloth, tucked under floorboards. She didn't read it, not yet. But she held it like it weighed more than truth. Weeks passed. The ranch healed slowly. She mended fences, planted again, her shoulder scarred, and her eyes never softened. People came. Outcasts, widows, half-blood children turned away from town. She fed them, taught them, gave them names that weren't curses. They called her many things. Widow, witch, warrior. She never corrected them. She rode into town once, ledger in her satchel, eyes forward. Dropped it on the desk of a sheriff who didn't speak as he read. When he looked up, she was already gone. At night, she read the war journal. Every page. She added her own in the back. Stories of children who lived, fields that grew again, blood turned into bread. And when the wind howled, it didn't frighten her. Because now, the land howled with her.